Hello and welcome to the Level 30 review of Fire Emblem. It's finally here, it's an amazing game for sure and has tons of praise from critics, but how well does it work for the Level 30 gamer? Find out now. Fire Emblem is the long-running series that started in Japan on the Famicom system in 1990 but didn't get a worldwide release until 2003 with Fire Emblem for the Game Boy Advance. With a few exceptions, the game was predominantly featured in Nintendo's handheld systems, and now that technically includes the Switch as well. Most people recognize the characters of the series from Smash Bros., and it makes sense given its relatively niche market appeal, which changed after the critical acclaim of the 3DS game, Fire Emblem Awakening. If you're new to the series, Fire Emblem is at its core a tactical role-playing game, which means the battlefield becomes a giant chessboard in which to position and move troops that have different strengths and weaknesses and weapons and magic in an effort to attack an enemy that will ideally fall victim to your strategy. Fire Emblem Three Houses is no different in that regard, but the gameplay that surrounds and bookends the tactical RPG elements have exploded into a brand new style that merges elements from other game genres as well. As the new character to the world, you quickly become invited to teach at the acclaimed Garreg Mach Monastery and lead one of three houses as their teacher. The first tough decision of the game is which house you want to be a part of, as all three live and dwell at the monastery. Which house you pick comes with its own strengths and weaknesses based on the characters that are enrolled there. While initially I found the decision to be a tough one, there is an early mission where you have to go talk to the leaders of each house, allowing you to see the stats and meet the rest of the team. I threw caution to the wind and went with a house whose personality I found to be the most charming and one I'd want to spend the 65 plus hours of the game with. And that kind of took precedent for me because having been a fan of the series for so long, I knew that while the story would be well developed and thoroughly planned, you stick with Fire Emblem games because of your attachment to the characters in the game. As per tradition, the characters themselves are very well rounded and thought out, and I was genuinely interested in learning more about them and having them grow amongst each other as well. It's worth pointing out that the character designs as well as the voice acting are really great too. Case in point, I was more likely to recall someone based on the personality of how they sounded and what they looked like instead of their actual name. The cutscenes you get along the story, as well as building bonds on the battlefield, are really wonderful and detailed, especially considering they can be ignored or skipped entirely. The same can be said for the classroom elements too. As the teacher, you move through the days of the week as any teacher would, holding lectures, giving advice, and motivating your pupils to excel at their crafts. I found this to be a clever and creative way to guys leveling up and building skills because it adds a personal level of input. For example, you may want to force one of your students to learn horseback riding and axe skills, and they may approach you mid-week to say they feel they'd rather put their efforts into magic. You could allow them or not, and while they may level up their preferred skills faster, there is nothing to say you have to cave in and give them what they want. This allows you to cater the skill set of your class to best suit your tactics on the battlefield. Once a week, you get say as to how you want to use your free time. Here, you can explore the school grounds where you opt to mingle over lunch with students, return lost items, engage in combat tournaments, hold special lectures, fish, cook, shop at the marketplace, and engage in small fetch-type quests. There is a limit to how much you can do each day, so you need to be wise in how you spend your time. Other free day options include battling, which act as smaller side quests. You get items and experience, but at the expense of not being able to boost motivation in your class. The less motivation you have, the less impact you can make on your lecture day. Finally, you can choose to rest, which regenerates some magic weapons as well as morale. This may sound overwhelming or confusing or both, which is what my impression was before I started playing, but the game does a really solid job of breaking you into the flow of things so you get used to it rather quickly, which is good because truth be told, it's a really wonderful entry in the series to jump on board with if you've never played any of the existing titles in the franchise. But the level 30 angle of things is where it gets a little complicated. Fire Emblem paces out its story and content really well. That being said, it can drive you towards longer play sessions if you aren't satisfied with engaging in characters and doing small quests around the monastery. It's entirely possible, for example, to play for a good hour and fail to make it into battle. Now for me personally, I enjoyed the depth of the character building system and leveling up mechanics, so I didn't consider this to be a drawback at all. In fact, if it's not your cup of tea, you can skip or automate that entire part of the game entirely, speeding up getting to the battles themselves. If you've already decided you don't care about the story and just want to engage in tactical turn-based fighting, then you can. It is without a doubt worth investing in that element of the game though, as you'd be missing out on what makes Fire Emblem really special. The battles themselves can range anywhere from 12 to 20 minutes for side missions or 35 to 40 minutes for story missions, which makes them pretty great on the go, but still may border on long depending on where you're playing and how much free time you have. Now famously, Fire Emblem has been known to offer several options in regards to difficulty levels, so that may help newcomers get acclimated to the game a bit better. In addition to normal and hard modes, which is pretty self-explanatory, it also offers up classic and casual play modes, and you can mix and match those how you like. The difference between classic and casual mode is that in classic mode, when your characters die on the battlefield, they die permanently for the remainder of the game. It's not meant to be frustrating or impossible, but really add weight to the decisions you make on the battlefield. Plus, if you've spent a lot of time with these characters, to add to the emotional feeling of loss as they disappear forever. And that feeling really sucks. Purists of the series will tell you classic is the way to play, and they're better for it, but I unashamedly play casual mode. For starters, I like building a bond with these characters, especially when I send them up against a foe who might be mismatched in the enemy's favor. You cheer them on when they triumph and feel the loss of strategy when they die, but they always come back afterwards. Secondly, I, much like you I'm sure, value my time. Playing for an hour in a battle to lose a character in a foolish way that you've spent 30-40 hours with the entire game would drive me absolutely bonkers. So if you're honest with how you want to play the game, play it that way and enjoy it. I know it was a mouthful, but that's my take on Fire Emblem Three Houses. It's an excellent game if you give it the time to develop the right way, engage in relationships with interesting characters, and an interesting world. The story, while fairly straightforward, gave me its fair share of surprises and twists, which I really enjoyed, and the tactical role-playing turn-based battles hit just the right level of strategy and planning that makes them satisfying and rewarding. Most outlets are reporting over 70 hours for one playthrough, and with stories you're going to want to see the other sides of or continue long past your game rolls its credits, playing again with a second house is a great option to keep the good times going. For more information on Fire Emblem and all other Nintendo goodness, lock it in the level 30 games and I'll see you in the next level.